Hi, this is Corinne Saunders with Outer Banks Insider. Welcome to our 4th episode of Down the Road, where we interview community members who live down the road from you. The show is sponsored by CMG Home Loans in Kildeville Hills, North Carolina. Our subscribers get early access to this show and to all of our exclusive reporting. To become a subscriber today, go to www.outerbanksnews.org. We're here today with Paris Murray, and she grew up on the Outer Banks, and she is a licensed clinical social worker. Hi Paris, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you grew up, you said, starting in Manio and then moving to Nags Head. Tell me about your childhood here on the Outer Banks.
All of my developmental years were really in Nags Head, you know, the ones that I remember, like middle school and the beginning of high school. But when I was a little kid in Manio, it was, such a small community. We would ride our bikes around the neighborhood and it felt safe, you know. We could leave our door unlocked in those days and not have to worry about anything. And the same, living in Nags Head, I lived like on the beach road and in an area that isn't very residential. And, you know, my mom used to sit up and watch us from the top floor balcony on the beach and, you know, pack us a big bag of snacks, and frozen grapes were my favorite, and like Gatorades and stuff in the morning, and let us run across, and she'd just watch us. And it's really kind of crazy to see the change, you know, for what the Outer Banks was then when I was a kid to now, you know. When I was a kid, everyone knew everyone. It was very strange to go somewhere in the off season, first of all, because everything was closed.
Right,
that too. Yeah. But then to go somewhere in the off season and not know everyone, it's kind of weird. It's like, who is that person?
Yeah.
What are they doing here? But yeah, so going from that very small town feel, growing up where there was no way I was getting into anything in high school, and then coming home and my mom not knowing before I got there, you know? To what is now the Outer Banks, that is very densely populated for such a small area. It is really mind-blowing. The house that I grew up in on the beach road in Nags Head now has 2 houses between that and the ocean, and my mom used to watch us at the beach. Yeah. So it's kind of mind-blowing. It's really mind-blowing. I watched a lot of development over the years.
Yeah. And you graduated from Manio High School, and then you went on to study social work and psychology at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro.
Yeah, you did your research. I did.
What led you to that field of study?
When I was in high school, I really wanted to be like a child psychiatrist. And I was so passionate about it, and like using integrative and lifestyle medicines for psychiatry.
What got you into that?
I don't know. Maybe like my own personal mental health, and others around me and their struggles with mental health, and, you know, just the lack of resources for treatment options in our area here on the Outer Banks at that time. And then just pure interest, like wanting to know more. And so when I went to school in undergrad, my mom had already told me I was a social worker, but I didn't believe her. So I went straight in as a psychology major, finished almost all of my psychology classes by my sophomore year. And I was like, so where's the part where we talk about how we work with people? And I quickly learned that that's not what the undergrad program was. It was more about research and studies, which I love, but I wasn't getting to the point. And so my mom's like, yeah, because you're a social worker. Like, you care about the mind, you're very intrigued by psychology, but you're a social worker. And so I did like the intro class you could take for the social work major without being accepted into the program. And I was like, oh, these are my people. This is what I'm trying to do. Yeah. And then, of course, my mom was right, because she's always right. Truly, she is always right. And I applied for the School of Social Work, got in, and then I met some of the most influential people in my life still to this day. Some of my great friends, amazing professors and mentors. And going into my senior, and so I started that program my junior year. Going into my senior year, I was like, I don't know what's next. I was like, God, what happens after college? I didn't have any aspirations of going straight to grad school or going to grad school. I just didn't know. And then I had some really great leadership in my program. I was like, you got to go to grad school. Just keep going. And I was like, oh no. And then I was like told to apply for this program and that program and this program. And I was like, yeah, all right, God, I'm going to give it a try because everyone thinks I can do it. And I did. Also, in my senior year, around the same time, really after I started applying for programs and stuff, or deciding what programs I was going to apply for, there was a lot happening here at home. I think most people in our nation, not just in our little community on the Outer Banks, can relate with this, but it's almost impossible to not know someone that's impacted by substance use disorder.
Right.
So there have been some overdoses that people had grown up with. I had a classmate pass away from a car accident involving alcohol. There was a lot happening here in my home community, and I was like, I gotta figure out how to come back home and serve my people. I've got this social work background now in undergrad, and I need to figure out how I can help because my passion's here. You know, my people.
And so you went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for grad school. And how was that program?
I was there in a very interesting time too. While I was there was when the Silent Sam protests were happening, and just our country, where it was politically, continues to be politically, but in that time it seemed so elevated for what I knew in my lifespan, right? So I was there in a very interesting time. I did the advanced standing program, so I was only in Chapel Hill for a year, on campus the whole time. Not living on campus, but like on campus for all of my classes. And it was interesting. I made some amazing connections though, and again, people that'll be with me for the rest of my life. And it opened doors and opportunity for me to do things that I never could have imagined that I'd be able to be a part of or learn about, and so.
Yeah. And so then you came home, and how was that experience from having been away?
Well, after you get out of school, it's really hard to find a job. It's very hard to find a job. The market is definitely saturated. But I was really excited to come back home and serve my home community. I had like, how? What do I do with this? you know? So it was really exciting to get back home, and I got involved in a few different organizations, and it's kind of still what I'm doing, and just different nonprofits and human resources and things like that.
So you're providing like therapy services to people?
Yeah, so when I first came home, I also had no desire to go clinical at all. I am a macro social worker in like my traditional education. I am very into like the community level, the state level, and federal level of social work practice and policy advocacy and research and things like that. My master's is in community management and policy practice. And I really wanted to keep it more macro on a community level at the least. But then I quickly realized while I love the face-to-face interpersonal, like I want to be able to do more with it. And in the position I was in, I was like, it would be great for me to be licensed. So then I started pursuing that, and that position actually didn't need me to be licensed. So I found other opportunities where I'd be able to grow and expand on my skills and become licensed. And with the great, great, great support of the best clinical supervisor ever, who is Jennifer Smith. I love her. I love her. She was just amazing and was already so intertwined in the community, and we have a lot of the same passions, and she was a local clinician, and she took me under her wing for my clinical supervision. And while we never worked in the same organization, she was just so supportive. So that's what we did. I pursued my licensure, and it was
How long did that process take?
it's a minimum of 2 years to get the license. You have like at least 2 years of clinical hours that you have to do as your associate license. And then you have to do the state board exam, and I mean, there's reviews that you have to do every 6 months. The application process is a lot. There's a lot of that goes with it, and it ended up taking me with like transition of careers. If I remember correctly, like 3 years.
And then it was last April when you announced that you had passed.
The state boards, yeah, which is nerve-wracking because it was nerve-wracking leading up to it. I was spending more time studying than sleeping, while working full-time and also practicing as a clinician under my associate license. Yeah, so the exam that we take for the state boards is notorious for having disproportionately low passing rates for Black women. And there's been a lot of research and studies into it. And there are like social work organizations that are actually advocating for change in this exam. And so, I mean, I kind of put it off. I was like, I need to take the test a little later so I can study more, because I didn't really ever get time to study, and I didn't really get to study until like, honestly, a couple months leading up to it.
Yeah, and you said you're the first Black licensed therapist in Dare County. Is that something that the board had shared with you at the time?
No, and I want to rewind.
Okay.
So with the exam, most people take multiple, well, not most, but a lot of people take multiple attempts to pass it, especially Black women. So my about the post was like, I passed on the first time. I couldn't believe it. That's really what that was. It was like, oh my God, like, yes, I passed my state boards. I passed on the first time. What the heck? I did not anticipate that.
Yeah.
At all. Went into it knowing I wouldn't pass on the first time.
Congratulations, because you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you, in your field, I mean, do you know of any other Black licensed therapists in the county?
I do know of some clinicians, well, that are not like LCSWs like me, but not that are from here, became licensed, started practicing here, associate licensed here. Yeah, no.
Yeah. And what struggles have you seen in our community in particular, just in your field of work?
Oh my gosh, my field is social work, so it's all the fields of struggle. Are you asking kind of like what are some major fields of struggle in our community right now?
Yeah, maybe any that are different from other areas.
One, we're rural, even though we are a tourist destination, and our population like grows, what is it, tenfold almost in the summer? Yeah, we're still rural.
Right.
And even though our population has grown so much in size year round, we're still rural.
Yeah.
We have lack of access to resources like mental health resources that are higher level. We don't have like inpatient treatment for mental health or substance use detox and things like that. We're in a housing crisis. For the amount of people in our population that struggle with substance use disorder, in my opinion, we just don't have a lot to offer in the way of resources, which I am so grateful to be a part of the Saving Lives Task Force, because that need was solved. Also, it was seen. And big brains got together and thought, this is the state of our community and what can we do about it? And they've started getting together so many of the resources we do have so that we can better support and work together to serve our community. But that is like one thing about our area. We're rural. Transportation is huge here, or lack of transportation, especially because we're like a long strip. And if you do not have a vehicle, it's really hard to get from one town to another.
Definitely.
Especially if you live like down south on Hatteras Island and you need to get to Kettleville Hills for work. No car, that's a big issue. With our lack of public transportation, even housing. What a housing crisis we are in, which you can see across the nation right now. Things are growing and booming, but we are truly in a housing crisis where people that I grew up with, that my mom grew up with, like my family is from the Outer Banks many generations, so like my grandparents grew up with, and even more so my great grandparents, you know, like their families that grew up here on the Outer Banks their whole lives being like that rented, for instance, and losing their housing, or not being able to afford to still be here. And so having to move out of the area, sometimes commuting for work, and some people that have just had to completely relocate. It's really hard to make a livable wage here for what the cost of living is.
Absolutely. And you're among the few probably in your peer group that have come back, right, after schooling. And
I would say, like, in my graduating class from Manual High School, which was only 84 students, 84, it's mind-blowing, compared to how big the schools are here now. I would say a good share of us have come back. A good share of us never left. A lot of people never left. But then those of us that have left, a lot of us have come back. I do feel like. I see all my classmates all the time. It's a small beach. It's still a small beach.
yeah.
Yeah, but I guess like when you think of people that have gotten higher education and come back, maybe not as many of us. A big part of why I moved home, and something that was very, very, very important to me, it was to be able to show other minority kids that you can become educated, you can break down some of the barriers that have been there historically, and you can bring others up with you. And there's so much to be said for that, because we're only better and stronger together.
Right.
My freshman year, I lived in the International House, which was probably one of the biggest blessings ever in my life. And to see people from so many different countries, so many different cultures, so many different belief systems, so many different like backgrounds and family makeups and aspirations for their future because of their backgrounds. And I learned a lot about what history actually is and how we are perceived by other countries, and to bring this all back around, coming back home, I was in culture shock again. Because I was like, oh my gosh, this is where I grew up. This is very much so a lot of who I am. And I think like it's when I really realized when I moved back home, like, oh, a lot of the people that I grew up with and their parents and their grandparents and other people that live in the area, their beliefs greatly differ from mine.
And they haven't necessarily had that exposure.
Yeah. There's a huge lack of exposure. And I think like a lot of people from here go to the same universities. I mean, even me and several other of my classmates went to UNC Greensboro. Um, but we kind of go in clusters when we leave here. You still know people because a lot of us have never really had to go into a space where you had to meet people because it's so small here. We're not used to being around people we don't know. We're completely surrounded by people we don't know, right? Or diversity. Or diversity. I think to say the least, it is sometimes unbelievable to me how sheltered the Outer Banks is from experiences of people even a county over, even an hour away, 2 hours away, in the same state or over state lines. And I do think that that has a huge impact on how they perceive the world. But I do hope that a lot of the people that I grew up with, a lot of people here locally that are many generations Outer Banks, like my family, can see that there's so much more to the world than I think this is the most beautiful place. I travel the world and I think this is just the most beautiful place. We have such a beautiful community, such a great sense of support and love, but there's even more of that outside of this area. And I really encourage people that live here and don't do a lot of traveling to get out and meet people that are different from them and start there from just building relationships and seeing how other people have experienced life.
Yeah. And so you are also in a play coming up, right?
Yes. With Theater of Dare.
Yeah. What made you want to get involved there?
So I was a theater kid in high school. I give a lot of props to my mom and Connie Rose. I did not want to be a theater kid. I've always been an athlete. When I was in school, I was a year-round athlete, and I was like, I don't want to be in a play. I don't have time for all that. I can't dance. Can't do choreography. You don't probably want to hear me sing. But like, and I missed the big show that Connie Rose and my mom really wanted me to do. And then the next semester, I was like, oh, I'll take a theater class. All right, because I love Connie Rose. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Ended up taking, I think, 3 theater classes in high school. And continued my love for theater like the rest of my life and going to Broadway, like I've seen so many Theater of Dare shows. So I was really excited when the show that I'm going to be in this month, Significant Other, when they announced that it was going to be one of the shows for this season. I was like, oh yeah, this is like a dream show to do with my best friend. And I don't want to give too much away, but it is a story about a guy and the way his life changes and his relationships with his 3 best friends change as they age and have significant milestones like marriage. And it is me and one of my very best friends since childhood's like worst nightmare. It's like one of us gets married off and the other one's left behind. And show is truly just like a representation of, you know, all of those like self-conscious thoughts that you have in your late 20s when you don't have everything perfectly in place. So yeah, I was really excited to audition, and I am in fact in that show with my best friend.
Very nice. Is this your first big production?
This is my first show with Theater of Dare. It's my debut, and I'm really, really excited.
Awesome.
I'm very nervous.
That's okay.
Very nervous, but very excited.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share that we haven't touched on?
I think what I shared about like just getting to know people is very important and expanding your experiences. But also, this is such a beautiful place to live. because there are so many amazing people. And there is so much love, and we do rally together when someone is in need. I just hope that I can see us continue to have that kind of empathy and passion for our neighbors that are in need, that don't have the same backgrounds or experiences as us, or ones that we can relate with personally.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's kind of the point of this show too, is to get to know your neighbors. And, you know, even if it's through a screen, people can meet some of the people who live in the area just like they do, and, you know, hopefully learn something from different perspectives and experiences that everybody has had.
Yeah, I'm truly blessed because my mom is such an amazing person, and it's really who she is, and she really instilled that in us, to love and respect and have empathy for others, even if their story doesn't look like ours or we can't even understand it.
Right.
So she's my biggest hero. She's my biggest hero, and same with like my sister and, you know, my cousins and my aunt, and just I'm so blessed, my friends, to be surrounded by people that share those same values. And there are opportunities for us to grow in this community, and I look forward to being a part of that change.